My name is Ranjani, and I am a scientist by profession, and I was like anyone else. I'm still like anyone else, and yeah, I have had various good influences at very influential points of my life, and that's where I reached this position where I am. So, like, um, to mention a few, like for example, Jawaharlal Nehru Planetarium when I was on undergrad stage, um, and yeah, IISc for a grad stage, and also in my career, Professor CNR Rao. So I've had various good influences. I've put in my effort, I don't deny, and so I'm here. I was born in Mysore, but brought up completely in Bangalore. I was born to actually my family is almost a complete family of academicians, but from the previous generation. My grandfather was, though I've never met him in my life, I've known him as a very influential figure because he was responsible for not only educating all his sons, but also educating all his daughters, a couple of his daughters. And they became, eventually, like my aunt, my father's sister, was the first woman to have a PhD in my family. And there has been a lot of PhDs in my family. So this was like not forced upon me, but the other very influential person in my life was my mom in very non-traditional ways. She was the one who actually, like, from my schooling, she has been supportive of my independent thinking, non-traditional ways of thinking. For example, I was told in school that I don't know how to do mathematics when I was in grade one, and she went around fighting with the teacher and said, like, no, I know she knows mathematics, because she knew that I was doing an intuitive thinking, and she brought me up with that this thing. And today I'm a physical chemist, wherein mathematics cannot be ignored. So she was obviously right, but to take that non-traditional path at a very young age, she was very influential. And then she also, the other thing that she did very much for me was that she pushed me to follow my passion. Although that passion was not the trendy thing at that time. So she had to, she stood by us, fought with the society. And both me and my sister, we are two of us, two girls, and we're both very well accomplished in very different fields. She's a psychologist, I'm a chemist. I think the one cornerstone was my mom. The two people who have strongly influenced in my family was my grandfather, whom I've never met, but that set a trend for the whole family, and also my mom, who has really understood me, I would say. So this is how I came here. And also another place that has really influenced me at especially my undergraduate career was this program called DEEP, Research Education Advancement Program. This is a supplementary program that was given by Jawaharlal Nehru Planetarium. This was actually in the beginning stages when I joined, and they were trying to see why people in Karnataka were not getting into research institutions, what was lacking, and they were trying to supplement what was lacking. And I was one of the first batches there, and it gave me exposure to scientists, real life scientists, how they think, what should you be doing as an undergraduate, how to become a scientist, what are the various fits and falls, and etc. That actually led me to into the research life. So that is where I got into this research life. And following that, I got into ISC, but I think not everything is the same. I was heavily influenced by my PhD supervisor, for example. Um, he taught me, for example, how small things can become big things, how to think like a scientist, because it's not about you're a chemist doesn't mean that you can only do one. I keep telling everyone that once a scientist, you're always a scientist. In family life, in your personal life, in your professional life, everything you start thinking. And that thinking, the thought process is very important. And that evolved with my PhD supervisor. And that kind of helped me get to this stage. And that is how I came up almost all the way to being an independent researcher. At this stage, Professor Sienna Rao recognized my talent. He has guided me at various points in my life, how to lead an independent career, how to become a leader, how to get the students to follow you, how to get the whole following to follow you, because we live in a very all said and done a male dominated society. So you need to put in that extra effort to be taken seriously, to reach the level where you are. And that has been, I've had various influences at this stage. She was a housewife. She did her MSc and a library science, but she kind of gave up her career for her kids. She was at that point of time. She thought like, okay, I have young kids, and I need to take care of them. But then probably later in her life, at some point when we had crossed, like say 12th standard or something, when we were independent, that's when she was trying to, I mean, she didn't really want to work at that point of time, but yes, but she was actually pursuing a lot of her hobbies. She is a very creative woman. So she was making, for example, blankets and selling them to kids, and all sorts of creative activities, and either gifting them to kids or selling them to kids, but she never had a career of it. So let me just expand a little rather than give you one moment, because there was no one moment, but there have been, as I said, I come from a family of academics. So there have been kind of stories from my father, you know, when I did this PhD, I did this, I did that, like that. It's like, you know, stories that you get to hear as a child. And over a period of time, it became like, you know, it's not like an option or something. If you go there, yeah, it's like going to second standard, third standard, and fourth standard. I went from MSc to PhD to postdoc. But more than that, but to decide that I want to become a chemist was when I was in 12th grade. I suddenly realized that, organic chemistry is a lot more interesting than what it sounds, because I could find logic in what people thought that it has to be memorized. So I was not memorizing these reactions. I used to try to find logic. And I was almost very certain that I wanted to become an organic chemist at 12th grade. But once I started my undergrad and then post graduation, I was an integrated PhD student at IISc, and during the postdoc days, you get to explore different labs, and that is where I got to explore organic chemistry lab, inorganic chemistry lab. So I realized that it is not the reactions or the organic chemistry that I'm interested in, but rather the way this physics behind it, the physics behind the organic chemistry. So the kind of physical organic chemistry. So that is when I realized that actually I would much rather become a physical chemist than an organic chemist. And that is where it was the final turning point where I decided that I wanted to go to physical chemistry. Actually, physics was never my hated topic, but in fact, I was the all-time university topper in physics. But I liked chemistry. So this was a nice marriage between physics and chemistry. So I became a physical chemist. I have been working on, for example, most of my research career I've been working on nanomaterials. And nanomaterials have actually been, when I started my career, they were like the research topic. But now there are many applications from nanomaterials. So it is how these things converted from being a research topic to being into applications. And in that application process, one of the main, kind of success story is, for example, the Samsung LEDs, the Samsung TVs, the quantum dot TVs. And many things have contributed to that. And I'm specifically proud that, okay, some parts of it have been influenced by my research as well. For example, like, uh, to have a sustained luminescence that would, continue for this long is a challenge. And I don't work in very much of application oriented chemistry or physics, but I have been responsible for, when I say that you need the fundamental science to reach the application. I've been responsible for finding out the mechanisms involved and so on, so that it can eventually be there for actual science and application. So similarly, something I'm now working on, which I'm hoping will get into application maybe like 10 years from now, is on quantum photonics. So for example, if I want to have, if an army would like to have a quantum device to send messages across, but most often the big problem is that most of these devices work at low temperature and we need it at room temperature. So if I can get a specific property that can behave like a quantum phenomena in room temperature, then yes, it would eventually lead to a large number of military applications already. And there could be other applications as well. There are other applications as well, but military has already shown interest. So they have to send some encrypted messages across. And the encryption should not be de-encryptable unless you have the proper code. So for that, the process, one of the best ways of encrypting is through quantum photonics, because I myself cannot predict what will come next. Unless I give the key, I cannot predict some, let's say, for example, a random number generation. How do you make sure that it's actually random? Because you have been using random numbers all your life, I'm sure, because all your banking, for example, you get this suddenly one-time OTP, which is a random number. But how do you really ensure that it's a random number that somebody else cannot encrypt? And that is where this quantum mechanics can help, because the quantum mechanics truly generates a random one, which I myself, even though I am the one who's making it, I cannot predict what will come next. In that sense, it's a random number generation. So it could, I mean, of course, it could influence banking or any of these things where you have this OTP generation. But as you can think of it, army would be more interested in doing that before, common man gets into that. And that is one sort of quantum. The other thing is, like, for example, I want to polarize light in a particular direction. And I don't, I want to be biased, but I don't want to be exactly telling light, okay, you should go to this or this. So then I have these quantum channels which will come statistically independently. It could come through this channel or this channel, and then I can bias it accordingly. So I can really get a random quantum polarizer. So this has applications in spintronic devices. So these are some of the applications that people are looking at the moment. So we'll have to see if they actually make it to the real life. At the moment, the major problem is most of these died on by 80 Kelvin. And if I have to talk about it in real life situation, 80 Kelvin is almost like, that is something that you cannot even touch. If you have nitrogen in liquid state, that is 80 Kelvin. So it's a very, very cold temperature. And I don't want to be sitting inside a cold bath to do any of these things. So I have to get some room temperature. In the past research, for example, I've been working for almost 10, 15 years now on what are the mechanisms of this quantum dots emission. So emission, I mean, like, you have this bright light coming out of it, red, blue, green, yellow, whatever. So initially it did make a big surge in this research, because it was one of those things you could just change small thing, and you could use the same material to get red color, blue color, green color, whatever you want, and then you could use it in devices, was what people thought. But once they started getting that routinely, that is when they realized that it is not as simple as that. You need to also make sure that, for example, this emission is stable, long lived, and it should sustain the continuous harassment of light, because you shine light and then you get back light. But that shining light should not degrade the device. There was also this issue of these were small particles. So what was not very important for bigger particles became very important. So you had to find ways of suppressing it. So all these eventually had to boil down to what is exactly the mechanism. Can we change the mechanism to do that? And so we were involved in all of those, finding out mechanisms, what are the problems because of which it's degrading and all of that. But now, after that, it was handed over to various industries have taken it up, and it has now transformed into some real life, like I said, some of the quantum dot TVs, which means that they are continuously using these pixels, red, blue, green pixels, which are quite stable. Of course, there is a lot of research involved from going from there to getting it here to commercialize it, etc. But the fundamental part was what we I mean, no life is without failures. Uh, Everybody has had various failures. Uh, I've had, on a professional note, I would say fairly easy path. There were small failures, but nothing that could not be recovered from. Personally, there were issues about, for example, I was a victim of this male-dominated society, um, especially in marriage. So uh, it's, for example, my PhD became an overqualification. Um, I'm very tall. My height became an overqualification because, in Indian society, men are expected to be taller than their wives, and the men are expected to be more well-read than their wives. Men are expected to earn more than their wives. And all these things actually affected, although initially it didn't affect, eventually it was very overburdening for uh, both of us. And eventually I just decided to get out of it. But I don't take any failure like a failure, because for every failure, there is a positive attached to it. And it's up to you to decide whether you go on crying about the half spilt milk, or are you going to be happy about the remaining milk. And that's where I think I even had a child from like sperm donor. I'm very happy to have this child, and I'm very happy to be the mother to the child. It is a single parenting. There are challenges involved, but it's like, instead of saying like I don't have a family life, I can say that I have a very loving child. Instead of saying like I don't get this, I don't get that, I can say I have a very loving family. And in that sense, my parents have been, parents and extended society have been very, very supportive of me, and they're really very proud of me, and I am very proud to be a part of that family. So I choose to, the way I get out of any failures is I choose to look at the positives. I look at where my weaknesses were, why did it fail, and try not to do it again. But always hindsight is 2020, so I cannot assure you that I will not redo it again. But I'll try to improve, and I try to do the same for my students as well. I show them where their weaknesses are in their professional life, while they should enhance their strong points by emphasizing more on their strong points. I do also tell them that, okay, look, you don't have to tell everyone this is your weakness, but that this is your weakness, so you improve on it, and that always helps to make them better people. It has helped me make myself a better person, and it has helped many of my students. Actually, my students are quite grateful for those inputs, so that it has made them better people, and it has made me better person myself. But yes, when I did consider, you say I'm a very strong woman. I guess you must have noted by now that I'm a very strong woman. So I was not particularly worried about what people would talk about me. But I also was mindful of the fact that, I have to live in this society and I have to raise a child. True, I will bring up this child with all the strength that I can give, but there could always be some back talking that I have to be ready for. And so, yes, I did think about many things. And one of the things, for example, was where do I have a child? One thing I've noticed over a period of years that I've associated with various scientists is the science is a very open-minded profession. Scientists are more accepting of things than normal, the rest of the society. So I'd been living in a quarters, for example, and I decided that I'm not going to move out of the quarters until I have a child, because it's okay to move into a new house with a child, but in an apartment, suddenly a single woman shows up pregnant. There could be 100 people talking about 100 different things, and something can reach my child's ear. And how is he or she going to deal with it? That was something that I think I had to really think a lot. And that is where I made that decision that all the people whom I knew were the people like my friends, my family, my colleagues. They've all been very accepting of this. And in fact, I'm overwhelmed. But surprisingly enough, almost anyone that I've told this story post the child, almost everybody has applauded the effort. I've not had I don't know if people might have thought about it in a negative sense behind my back, but in front of me, not a single person, almost every person have been like, I'm very happy that you went through this. You must be so brave to do this. And that kind of, we need these kind of people more in the society. These are the kind of comments I've been getting. It's been starting from, my maid to bank officer to whomever. I mean, this is never a secret. I've told it to many people, and everywhere I've got positive feedback. So I hope it will continue to be. It might be my children's friends, parents. Um, so it's just like everywhere. And my son has just started going to school, so that's one place I'm still looking forward for what would be, because children talk and parents talk, their parents talk, and the children translate something else in school. So I'm looking forward to see what that experience will be like. Now my biggest the lesson that I've learned from this thing is not that I can change the entire world, but I think my effort is to change the next generation rather than the current generation. So being a mom of a son, I think I have a very important role. And I say this to everyone. It's not only about bringing up women. Yes, women need to be brought up. But at the same time, it's not going to be easy to bring them up in a patriarchal society. So what you need to do is to change, put in an effort to change the society. And how do you change the society? By changing the thinking of the young boys. How do young boys talk about women? How do young boys look upon the independence of women? How do young boys say it's okay to lean on your wife when they become older? And those thought processes start when they're young. And as a mom of a son, tomorrow I want to bring up a son who is like, I really don't mind if my wife is more qualified than mine. I really, I want to give her as much an independent space in her opinions as I would give my opinions to. Uh, Leaning on someone is not a weakness. Every time I lean on somebody, somebody else leans on me. Like I lean on my father when I was younger. Now my father is leaning on me. So that's not a weakness. That's the way of life. And that's why we as humans, love is leaning on each other. So I think that's a big thing that even when I say for young social change makers, they don't only target women, target young girls. I agree, but also have this multi-pronged approach wherein you're targeting the young boys, change their thinking. It's impossible to change an adult thinking instantly, but you can change a young child's thinking. So try to implement that at a very young age, that they're not somebody, like lesser than you, women are equal to you. And that thought process has to be inculcated from very young age. And that is where I think we have a big role to play. I I have many dependents on me. I take care of my 80-year-old father. I take care of my 4-year-old son. But at the same time, I don't ignore my life. So these 8 hours or 9 hours that I work, I I never wanted to live in a quarters next door, because I really target being like, this blocked things. Like, this is my office time, this is my home time, this is my personal time. So, like for example, I really feel like I need to work out every day. So I get up at 5 o'clock in the morning, 6 to 6:30, 6:45. I have decided that this is my workout time, no matter what. It's not like a compromisable thing. I I know I need to do it. So I do things for myself. And then the second thing that I do is I combine, because children are very influential. So I try to influence my son to like things that I like, so that we can do things together. For example, I like being in the outdoors a lot. From a very young age, I've been carrying him around for small hikes. Now he's a reasonable, mountaineering, not mountaineering, but trekking and that kind of. He loves climbing up hills, and he can actually climb faster than me. Uh, Maybe small hills. Energy is comes in bursts, but it comes, and I make the best use of it. I go to small places. He's happy, I am happy, and I'm taking care of my, I go with my friends who have similar interests, who have similar children, so similar age group of kids. Like even yesterday, day before yesterday, we went on a very small hike with a 3-year-old and a 4-year-old. Both of them climbed, we also climbed, we all had a good time, and they had a good time too. So I think it's helpful for me that, one, I prioritize my health, and two, I make my happiness my child's happiness. I influence from a very young age, knowingly or unknowingly, and that actually, makes two in one. There's one more thing I would like to add.
Sure.
This is kind of something that I'm very proud of. It's not directly related to my research, but it's related to my professional life. Is I told you about this Jawaharlal Nehru Planetarium, which was at the end, like I was one of the first batches. And now I have been going for the past several years. I've been teaching for the same program that I benefited so much from. And, it gives me a lot of pride and pleasure to say that something that helps me, I'm helping the next generation do that. So, I mean, this is something I'm really very proud of. And for them also, they are very proud of my achievements, for example. So every time I get something, they put up a big, I'm like their poster child. Like, this is what they were envisaging when they built up this program. And after that, we have many, many, many graduates now from that program, close to about 100. But I was one of the first. And giving it forward into the next generation has always been. I do as a voluntary teaching. I help them design experiments for their Science in Action program. They have a program, like a 3-day exhibition called Science in Action. So wherein you demonstrate various experiments to enthuse kids about. It was a heavily popular program. Designing experiments for that or some other, BSc students, these kind of voluntary things. Now I'm also part of. They have a big. They want to build a, lecture series with experiments. So I've been part of their advisory committee for that. So at various levels, I've involved in their program. It helped me, and I like to take it forward. So being involved at various levels, from my perspective, there's nothing to cry about loss. Life always has something better for you. it was never that, it was not always that I was this confident, strong. Over a period of time, I realized this, that actually this is the best life you can. Be happy as you are.